Nabil Aziz, becomingthealphamuslim.com, Runtings Rude Boy. So, we have a prayer in Islam actually that we recite off and on. The prayer goes, O God, show me the truth as truth and inspire me to follow it, and show me falsehood as falsehood and inspire me to stay away from it. And since this stream is really directed towards Muslims mostly, I just want to go through a few events relevant to us. In 1990, a 15-year-old girl named Naira testified in front of Congress. She said that the Iraqi army came into a hospital, took babies out of incubators, took the incubators and left the babies to die on the floor. This testimony was pushed by George Bush Sr. and mainstream media outlets like CNN to basically gin up support for American involvement in the first Gulf War. In 2002, Bush Jr. used a story about Iraq buying aluminum tubes, and this was pushed heavily by New York Times to flare up war for the second Iraq War, where the American military went after the weapons of mass destruction, which they found none of. In 2015, then candidate Donald Trump, he was running for presidency, was asked by a Yahoo News reporter named Hunter Walker, and I'll read you his question verbatim. Do you think we might need to register Muslims in some type of database or note their religion on their ID? Now, keep in mind, it was the reporter who stated this idea, or who asked the question of using this idea. Trump didn't actually answer this question. Here was his answer. He says, well, we're going to have to look at a lot of things very closely. We're going to have to look at the mosques. We're going to have to look very, very carefully. He didn't actually answer the question. He did a typical politician move where they don't answer the question. He just stuck to his talking points. Now, Hunter Walker, when he published that story in Yahoo News, he said Trump didn't rule out having a Muslim registry. And the way modern journalism works, it's not real journalism. It's something called churnalism, where a news outlet will publish a story first, and then all of the other news outlets will pretty much copy the same story reworded. Okay, so they'll spin the article and publish it on their websites. Now, in a bizarre game of telephone, it went from he didn't rule it out to he actually called for it. And then there was this mass hysteria in the Muslim community about Trump calling for a national Muslim registry. And these are all examples of fake news, all right? And the reason I am giving you these examples is because it really, we have to question for ourselves, what is reality? Reality is the information that our senses process plus our frame of reference for interpreting that information. Okay? Now, our senses can fail us and they can be manipulated. If you don't believe me, look up something called the McGurk effect on YouTube. And the McGurk effect is basically an optical illusion where when I say the word ba or say the word fa, okay? If I'm saying fa, but then I show you a video of a man saying ba, your mind, even though you know what's going on, even if you know what's going on, and even if you can see what's going on, if you can see the transition, your mind still thinks that the person that you're watching is saying fa fa fa. So what is reality really? And then it goes back to this, this prayer that I mentioned earlier. We need to have a huge amount of epistemological humility. That is, we need to understand that as human beings, we know very little about what is objectively true in the world. And in our case as Muslims, we arrogate that authority, we transfer that, that certainty, that is epistemological certainty, to the one thing that we know for certain is true, and that is God Almighty. So we have this prayer that I mentioned earlier, O God, O Allah, or O God, show us the truth is truth and grant us the ability to follow it. We also have situations where, for example, we're considering some worldly matter. Maybe you got a job offer, and we have a prayer for that, specifically asking for God's guidance. Religious folk in general, and Muslims in particular, we're always asking God for guidance to guide our way, and that is a form, I think, the highest form of epistemological humility. And epistemological humility is really the fundamental question that is being asked in Mike Cernovich's upcoming feature-length documentary, Hoaxed. And I've watched the preview of several times actually. Very impressed by the movie. It's miles better, exponentially better than his original movie, which the content of which, Silenced, was very good as well. Now, full disclosure, I did back the production of both of Mike Cernovich's film projects. In fact, my donation for Hoaxed was 10 times more than my donation for Silence, because I knew that Cernovich was going to create a fantastic product. And really what Mike is trying to answer, or he's trying to pose the question to us to make us think, how do you know what's true? Now, leave aside what we know for certain as Muslims, in that God's existence and the Prophet of Muhammad, those few things about our existence and the existence of the afterlife that we know to be true. But other than that, how do you know what is true? And that is the sort of big question that Mike Cernovich attempts to demonstrate, or his film crew attempts to demonstrate in going through this movie. And there are a number of questions asked, a number of topics discussed, related specifically to the mainstream media and new media and alternative media's ability to shape our reality for us. Because ultimately, reality, as we experience it, is a social construct. Okay? All of the inputs that our senses are, experiencing, all of the information that we are consuming, all of the internal beliefs that we hold as individuals and as a community, help to socially construct a reality around us. Now, what happens when two different human beings live in two different socially constructed realities? And that's what you're seeing now, for example, with the Kavanaugh hearing. Scott Adams calls this the two movies theory, where two different people can see the exact same event unfold, without any difference whatsoever, and they end up with two completely different understandings about the event, or two completely different opinions about the event. I didn't actually watch Kavanaugh's testimony yesterday, but look at one aspect of it. Look at how his emotion, his yelling, his crying was interpreted differently by the two different camps. My own personal opinion is that, his showing emotion can be interpreted as a sign of weakness, which is what's generally, men showing emotion in that way is something that is perceived as weakness and looked down upon. And those are my own biases. That's the movie playing in my head, right? And with this two movie theory, okay, you're also seeing that same effect playing out in the media. So you have conservative media like Fox News, you have liberal media like, CNN, and going through the different, situations that have happened over the past few years in the mainstream media. For example, the U.S. election. For example, the recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. For example, there was one segment where Cernovich interviews Tim Pool, who originally rose to fame for going to Egypt as an independent journalist and streaming what was going on during the Arab Spring. Lauren Southern is in there. Cassie J, a victim of fake news, a victim of horrible smear attacks because she had the gall to create an objective movie about men's rights called The Red Pill. Okay, Cassie J formerly was a highly celebrated feminist documentary filmmaker. Her first movie was about women's rights. Her next documentary was about LGBTQ, homosexuality, gay rights. But the minute she decided to, create a movie about the men's rights movements in an objective way, in a nonpartisan way, she was completely sidelined. She was not allowed to get any grants. Her grant applications were turned down. She had to crowdfund her movie. And then after the movie was released, the amount of lies and falsehoods and, fake news that was told about her was overwhelming, because people were not really able to see with objective eyes what is going on in this movie. So that's another guest who's there. Scott Adams is in there. Scott Adams talks about his two movies theory. He talks about how bad we are as human beings at being objective and judging truth objectively. Usually what happens, and there's a funny section where he talks about human beings are terrible at character judgments. So for example, a lot of people think of me, judge me as some sort of misogynist because of the way that I am on social media, when that couldn't be further from the truth. And they attempt to arrogate intention, and this is a problem in the Muslim community as well. They say when a Muslim does something another Muslim disagrees with, immediately that Muslim is accused of being a sellout, of having a corrupt intention, of being a hypocrite, all of those things, and we're all guilty of it. Who else is in there? Alex Jones is in there. Alex Jones, I was expecting more from his appearance, but Alex Jones is Alex Jones. Stefan Molyneux is in there. Pretty good stuff about, talking about the mainstream media's cover-up of communist and socialist atrocities. James O'Keefe is in there from Project Veritas. Peter Duke, the photographer, said something very profound where he said, all photographs are accurate, but all photographs are not the truth. His idea is that every photograph is a self-portrait, in the sense that the photographer, by the very act of taking the picture, has edited the event that has occurred. And that applies to video as well. When I interviewed Hussein Keswani for Becoming the Alpha Muslim, he made this point about citizen journalists, in the sense that citizen journalists don't have the ability to discern what has journalistic value. Well, isn't that the problem with mainstream media today? Them being the gatekeeper, deciding for us, the public, what has journalistic value or not. Yeah, that is a big problem with mainstream media. Tim Pool is in there, like I mentioned, and Tim Pool mentioned something very good, in the sense that the difference between citizen journalists and mainstream media journalists is that entrepreneurial attitude. And this is something I see with people like Hussein Keswani, who I don't have any personal problem with. I think he's a nice guy and a very good journalist. They are stuck in that employee mindset. They are still stuck in thinking that they need to operate within that system when that system is crumbling around them. Lauren Southern is in there. She talks about how everybody has biases. Mainstream media, everybody in mainstream media has biases. The only difference between mainstream media and alternative media is that alternative media are honest about their biases. Mainstream media journalists tend to hold themselves up as spotless individuals on a high horse, thinking that their biases don't affect the way that they report the news, when that is absolutely not the case. All you have to do is just watch the news. And then my two favorite guests were Ryan Holiday. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday, and it really shows how much of a legitimate intellectual authority Mike Cernovich is. Ryan Holiday is no slouch. He's a very, very, very smart guy. And for Ryan Holiday to take an interest in Mike Cernovich, Ryan Holiday has actually interviewed Mike Cernovich for the Observer website, observer.com. It happened, I don't know if it was after the election or before I think it was after the US election. And Ryan Holiday knows exactly what is going on with the media, because he wrote a book on it called "Trust Me, I'm Lying." How individuals like Ryan Holiday, who are marketers like I am, like Cernovich is, are able to manipulate the media to get their message out. Yeah, and Ryan Holiday does a really good breakdown of Cernovich's, people call it trolling, his marketing methods, because Ryan Holiday understands, because he wrote the book on it, that Cernovich is really just doing what the media is doing to people. He's flipping it on the script and doing it back towards them. All right, and the point comes up where Ryan Holiday makes the same point, and Mike Cernovich makes the same point, that Cernovich is a mirror reflecting the degeneracy of the mainstream media back at them. Ryan Holiday calls it the funhouse mirror. Basically, it's a reflection, but then it's an absurd caricature of what the object that is being reflected. And in logic, it's something called reductio ad absurdum, reduction to absurdity, where you will take a concept and refute it by taking it to its most ridiculous logical conclusion. All right, and the final person that I want to talk about, this was probably the biggest get for this film at least, where Jordan Peterson actually makes an appearance, and you can tell that the directors or whoever cut the film and Mike Cernovich realized the significance of Jordan Peterson being in the movie, because as soon as Jordan Peterson starts talking, the opening bars to Mozart's Requiem symphony start, and Google Mozart's Requiem symphony, you'll understand the significance of that piece of music. And the music actually serves to add so much more gravitas to Jordan Peterson's entry into the movie and his words, when Jordan Peterson on his own has plenty of gravitas as well. So the movie is really, really high quality. It's very it gives you a lot to think about in terms of, okay, just think about it from a Muslim perspective. Why am I funding a non-Muslim, Mike Cernovich's work like this? It's because I believe that the issues that he is exploring, free speech, fake news, have a direct impact on the way Muslims engage with a modern non-Muslim community, how we navigate modernity, and how we interact with each other as a community. Okay, because as a Muslim, I'm very plugged into the online Muslim audience. We're in places like Reddit, on Twitter, etc. It is profoundly disconcerting the way Muslims accept mainstream media narratives without any critical thought. And it's really turning our brains into mush. It is. The growth of extreme, leftist ideologies in our communities, the promotion of moral degeneracy in our communities, the outrage culture that is growing in our communities, the adoption and use of social justice activist tactics of silencing dissent, of shouting people down, of going on stupid protest marches that achieve nothing, of going into events and protesting and shouting at people and getting arrested and getting manhandled by cops. All of these things, they are not innate to our community. This is not from our tradition. This is not from our community. Where did it come from? It's an outside influence. And we need to understand that as Muslims, the media that we consume, the online content that we consume, the books that we read, if you read them at all, the YouTube videos that we watch, the podcasts we listen to, all affect the way we think. And I'll be the first to admit this. I have my own, biases from the content that I consume, because I consume a lot of anti-leftist, anti-liberal, anti-feminist content, high testosterone, pro-masculine, pro-male content, and it's obvious that I'm going to get affected by that. So I believe that, we as a Muslim community need to be honest with ourselves and really question our interaction with the outside world or the world around us, in terms of the way we interact with mainstream media, in terms of the way we interact online on social media, in terms of in the way we interact with each other as a community. And that is why I backed Mike Cernovich's HOAXED to the tune of well, I won't say the exact number, but it was a big sum of money. Not the biggest, but it was a large sum of money. And the movie comes out, I believe, in October. In the meantime, you can go and buy the HOAXED Book, which is a transcript of a bunch of interviews with additional material that Mike Cernovich put together. You can get it on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. I'll just read you the table of contents. There's an introduction. What it's like being lied about. Alt vultures. Journalists don't read books. Hack like Joy Reid. What no one tells you about selective editing. Censorship as a form of fake news. Fake news body counts. Someone called it Twitter police. Oh, there's a section here on Keith Ellison versus Brett Kavanaugh. So it's clear that Cernovich has put this together and put in up to date case studies or examples of stuff that's actually current in current affairs. He's talking about fact checkers, how the fact checkers are coming back with fake facts. Snopes covering up a mass shooting, SPLC and Pizzagate. He talks about what it's like being an influential media figure, credibly accused. CNN or Cernovich, who can you trust more? Is the deep state real? It's not okay to spread fake news. And he's also included long-form interviews with Scott Adams, James O'Keefe, Alex Jones, Stefan Molyneux, Cassie J, and Anthony Scaramucci. And there's the cover. Yeah? And you can buy the book on Amazon. $9.99, if I'm not mistaken, on your Amazon Kindle. There you go. Yeah? Get you some one-click ordering. All right? And I think that'll hold you over until the movie comes out, which I believe is coming out in October. He's already done, I think, at least one screening, and that went over very well. Another thing that I really liked about the movie is that the movie is really nonpartisan. He's got people from different ends of the spectrum. He's got and the good thing is he really doesn't present himself as the hero of the story. He's just another player in this socially constructed reality. And that is, one of the plus points of Cernovich as a person is that he is self-aware enough to know his role, as a sort of like from the outside looking in. So, for example, like I am self-aware enough to know my role as a sort of a mirror reflection from the hyper masculine side to the degeneracy of the Muslim feminists who are dominating online discussions in the Muslim community. So what I've gone and done is I am deliberately showing them a flipped script where okay, let's take the exact same the language that they use, the tactics that they're using, and let me do it flipping the genders. And that's causing a lot of problems. It's getting me a lot of flack, but I believe it's necessary to move the Overton window to something that's a little bit more balanced and nuanced. If everything is over on one side, yeah, if the discourse is over on one side, you can't bring it back to the middle by staying in the middle, right? If there's a pull, yeah, if this is the middle and this is where everything is, this is only going to move this slightly over here. You need to go all the way over on this side to pull all what's over here to the middle somehow. Yeah. So that is my review of Cernovich's HOAXED This is the movie poster. Highly recommend you get it when it comes out. It'll be available, I'm assuming, on Vimeo, on Amazon. Maybe I don't know if they'll get accepted, but maybe they'll try to get it submitted to Netflix as well. So it should be available where you get self-published or self-produced film material. All right. So to close, God show us the truth as truth and inspire us to follow it, and show us falsehood as falsehood and inspire us to stay away from it. The key here is the epistemological humility. And as Muslims, what we need to do is always ask God for guidance in all of our affairs. Recognize how limited our senses are. Recognize how limited our intellects are for processing the experiences gained by our senses. We are, as humans, very limited in our not only our understanding but in our ability to understand the world around us. And that is why we arrogate ultimate authority to God to guide us in our affairs, both our spiritual affairs and our material affairs. All right? Thank you for watching. This has been Nabil Aziz for BecomingTheAlphaMuslim.com and the Becoming the Alpha Muslim